My own lived experience with an anxiety disorder has shown me that it's as much a physical illness as it is a mental one. Surely the stigma surrounding anxiety would be lessened if there were more awareness of it as a physiological condition. How can we create a more rounded picture of anxiety and its associated disorders?
Look, this is a great question to really kick off this part of the conversation. And Mark, I want to come to you first on this. I mean, what is and what isn't anxiety?
Well, first of all, the head and the body is linked, right? So that separation of body and mind, I've never quite understood. And you can't really separate things. Anxiety, that feeling of fight or flight that we get, is really an evolutionary thing, right? So it's led to our survival, but it's not great when you're just sitting having a cup of tea with your loved ones and all of a sudden you get that horrible response like you want to run and leave the room. You get physical and mental sort of picture of anxiety, right? So physical, you get that horrible heart racing, palpitations, chest tightening, sweatiness, a bit like I'm feeling right now, you know, on the panel, but hey, that's what we do. Also, then you have those fearful thoughts that drive it. And often what comes first? Horrible thoughts, the physical, and there's that horrible mix.
Does it have to be both, or can it just be one or the other?
It can be one or the other. And actually you can start getting a horrible physical reaction and then start feeling anxious. But you can also just feel anxious and look absolutely calm. So there are different types of anxiety. And often people will say to me, for instance, you can't have anxiety, you look so calm, but inside there's a volcano and ice flows going, right? And that sort of jelly molding. And that's similar to I think what you're saying. Whatever what happens in terms of the brain or the body, it's not a very nice feeling when you're just trying to calm yourself down.
Let's get a bit of a sense from everybody, a bit of your stories and what anxiety really means for you, has meant for you through your life. Brooke?
I really resonate with the fight and flight mode. I think my early childhood, I definitely lived in a very sort of survival mode from my sort of background. So yeah, I'm kind of like Mark, like I'm calm on the outside, but inside.
Just tell people a bit of that background if you can.
I guess I had a mum and some family members that suffered from a lot of mental illness, and as obviously that's my motivation around being a mental health advocate. A lot of, I guess, you know, substance abuse, a lot of domestic violence. So yeah, I didn't actually know what anxiety looked like. I know what it felt like, but I didn't actually know what it looked like. And I think over time, you know, we all know that anxiety doesn't discriminate. Anyone can experience it, and we all experience it different ways. But I didn't realise that mine is more internal than physical, but I always have that bellyache. Like I do now.
Yeah, you know it when you feel it, yeah.
So yeah, it's that fight and flight mode is definitely I resonate with a lot.
Bridget Archer, what about for you? What has anxiety meant for you in your life?
Look, it's been, I feel like it's been a sort of a lifelong battle in a lot of ways, and I have a similar background story, I guess, to Brooke, and, you know, some childhood trauma, I guess, child sexual abuse, and it's manifested throughout my life in different ways, that anxiety, and I think sometimes it can take you by surprise because you don't recognise that it is anxiety, because often those physiological symptoms are what come first. And I remember very clearly the first time that I had a panic attack, and I thought I was having a stroke. You know, I couldn't see properly, and my face was numb and my heart was racing, and I didn't know what was happening, and I wasn't I didn't think I was feeling anxious or worried about things, but then I think you get that spiral of the physical symptoms coming first, and you know, like others have said, I'm probably feeling a few of those tonight as well, but those physical symptoms coming first, and then you know, it escalates because you're panicking about the physical symptoms as well. But you know, anxiety can creep up on you at any time. I think that's the really difficult thing about it, that you never know when it's going to come or when it's going to strike or how it's going to how it's going to hit. So sometimes it's difficult to know how to respond. And I guess as time goes on, you, if you're lucky, can develop some coping mechanisms and strategies to try and deal with that and to ground yourself. But I think it's that unexpected nature of anxiety that can make it very, very difficult to live with. And I agree, those physical symptoms are very, very real.
Well, hopefully by sharing experiences, having this sort of conversation can help. Stephen, what about you? We saw you give a pretty powerful speech a couple of weeks ago in Parliament about your nephew and your son. Tell us about your family's experience in this field.
Sure. Well, I actually didn't think I was going to out myself on national television on this particular issue, but yeah, I've lived with anxiety for most of my life, or most of my memory, for a good period of my life. I actually didn't have a language for it. And I think that's what you were saying. You don't have a language for it. You know no different. It's your body. It's just the way you've lived your life. Perhaps a slightly different take. I don't know if this is your experience as well, but for me it was both a positive and a negative thing. It was my superpower in some respects. It was the thing that was like a nuclear reactor in your stomach.
Tell me about that. What do you mean by that?
Well, it's two things at once. It's the nuclear reactor in your stomach and a foot on your chest. So you feel like you've got the energy and the capacity to just go and go and go and go and go. You can mow the lawn, paint the house, write a book. You've just got this amazing energy to do stuff. And then on other days, you can't get yourself to the second point on your to-do list for the day because of things. So, and then, you know, somebody says, well, actually, this is, I think, the thing you've got. And without going into the background of it, this is the thing I think you've got, and you need all of these strategies to deal with it. And then you start that journey. I suspect you've all had that.
Yeah, for me it started, you know, I went through my childhood and I went obviously through a lot and being a refugee, and I was bullied at school and in a tennis community as well. But
this is in Australia?
Yeah. But you know, most importantly, it was the abuse that I suffered at the hands of my father, emotionally and physically. And it was quite brutal, and I always kind of felt like I dealt with it really well. And I went through it, you know, as a youngster, and I burst onto the world tennis scene very, very young. I was 14, I was already on the tour and playing Grand Slams at 15. And I felt like I handled that so well, and I loved getting out there, even though I had a lot of problems, you know, in the background and with my father and at home. And I still felt like I would go out there and I would handle it really well, and playing in front of tens of thousands of people. But then all of a sudden, you know, I hit 18, I hit 19, and I left home, and all of a sudden I started, you know, for me it was actually depression and anxiety that came together. And all of a sudden I didn't want to get out there on the court. I couldn't play in front of people. I had this huge amount of anxiety about it. And not even just getting out there on centre court, I couldn't be around more than, you know, 3 or 4 people. And a little bit of what Stephen said, one day you would have this huge amount of energy. I mean, I'm naturally quite, you know, an energetic person, competitive, so I would have this huge amount of energy and I almost couldn't control it, but it was anxiety. And then the next day I would not be able to function or do anything. I would even run away from doing tasks. So that is very, very hard as an elite athlete as well. So I didn't know what it was at the time. Depression came with it together as well. And a little bit also to answer your question, yes, there is not enough, we don't talk about it enough. There is not enough visibility about anxiety and about depression and just how many people it affects in sport, in society. I mean, we've all dealt with it, but so many more other people out there. And it's not talked about, and we're not speaking up about it. We're not giving it a voice and other people a voice, which is a problem, which we need to do so much more.
Well, particularly when you consider some of the stats here, it's the most common mental health condition in Australia. 1 in 4 people, that's 1 in 3 women, 1 in 5 men will experience anxiety at some stage in their life. Over a 12-month period, more than 2 million Australians experience anxiety. You can see from the various walks of life we've got here tonight, you know, just how widespread this is. So it is important to have this sort of conversation.